Ed Santow, thanks for coming and having a chat with us today. Ed, you, of course, are the Director of Policy and Government at the Human Technology Institute. But you've been lots of other things before that. You've been the Human Rights Commissioner. That's where I first met you all those years ago. But we're here to talk about a really big topic, which in some ways feels so untangible and too big to grasp. And that, of course, is AI and the impact of that here in Australia, what that means for, the community. There's a lot of worry at the moment about things like big data centres, lots of community concern about and questions about what that means. And I really wanted to bring you in because your main focus is what this means for us, for humanity, for people. And so often I feel like the conversation ends up being about, caught up in technology jargon and tech bros this and, government promises that. And where do the people fit in the middle of all of this? So welcome.
Thank you.
And
it's great to be here.
It's great to be in Sydney, your hometown.
Yes.
Well, let's get started. I guess the first question I had, and I was hoping was, can you just explain a little bit, go right back, what is AI?
Yeah. So, for me, my origin story when it comes to artificial intelligence was 2 jobs ago. I was working as a human rights lawyer at an organisation that's now called the Justice and Equity Centre. And we had this service where young people could come with their legal problems to us and we'd give them free legal advice and representation. And this was in the early 2010s. And we just saw this growing number of young people, some as young as 12 or 13, who all had a remarkably similar story. So they were all kids from New South Wales who had some encounter with the police. It wasn't necessarily anything serious. In fact, in most cases, it wasn't serious at all. They may have been riding on the train without a ticket, something like that.
These kind of misdemeanors, very small scale.
Exactly. And then suddenly they found themselves on this list. And being on the list meant that the police would come and check on them, but often several times a week. Sometimes between midnight and 6 a.m. in their homes.
Come and knock on the door,
check that they weren't committing crimes.
Wow.
And so we worked on this for literally years, and we couldn't work out how these young people were being put on this list. And it actually took a series of questions from your now colleague, now known as Senator Shoebridge, in the New South Wales Parliament, to actually get to the bottom of what was happening. And that was that the New South Wales Police had this early algorithmic or AI system that was meant to identify young people who were at risk of kind of going into a life of crime. So this 1,800 young people who were all on this list. And the system learnt wrongly that Aboriginal and dark-skinned young people were more likely to commit crime. So it turned out that over 50%...
It had a significant bias.
It had a significant bias. So it was trained on the New South Wales Criminal Justice data set. And so that data set, has literally, more than a century of bias and prejudice built into it. And so it learnt that, Aboriginal people were more likely to commit crime. And so just to give you one stat from that, more than 50%, about 55% of those young people who are on this list were Aboriginal or Torres Strait Islander. Now, less than 3% of the New South Wales population is Indigenous. So it had gone massively wrong. And so for me, as a human rights lawyer, I was outraged and I was worried. I was worried about how this new technology, which was explicitly introduced to make that decision-making process better, to remove human bias or human prejudice, it was having the opposite effect.
Entrenching it.
Exactly.
And without kind of accountability.
Exactly. And so the police, maybe in their defense, they said, no, we built this system so that we would not have individual police officers working out who was, at risk of crime. We wanted to take that kind of subjectivity out of it. The problem is that AI is built by humans and it's trained on decisions that we've made. So it is
on information that
human.
already exists,
Exactly.
rightly, wrongly. If you think about the amount of history that AI has consumed already, written history, spoken history, recorded history, that's individual people's view of things.
That's right.
So, of course, all of those biases have fed into the system.
Yeah. So when you think about the history of the criminal justice system in Australia, going right back to the early days of the colony, we know that if you were Aboriginal, you were much more likely to be treated with prejudice. There's no other word for it. With racism. You're much more likely to have been convicted by an all-white jury who didn't have, a sense of fairness, as we would call it in 2026. And so when you then build a system that learns from that really old data, then it's like reawakening a zombie. It actually brings those old perspectives that we have tried really hard as a country to move away from. It brings it back.
So, I mean, this is such an interesting and kind of extraordinary example of why AI, as it currently is not, is not perfect. Is able to be fooled and to fool. I keep thinking about how it feels as though even the terminology of artificial intelligence is some kind of, magic. It's created up there in the atmosphere. Maybe it's, the tech bros have kind of worked it all out. It doesn't exist except in that realm, when in fact it's not artificial, it's extracted. It's an extracted intelligence. It's taken from the history books. It's taken from the songs. It's taken from newspaper articles. It's taken from the things people have input. It's human intelligence that has been repackaged and supercharged.
Yeah, that's right. There was this really famous piece in the New Yorker a few years ago, just after ChatGPT kind of went live for the first time. And the journalist referred to it as being like creating like a pastiche of human creation. And that is what it is, right? Like it's not something that is kind of bestowed on us by some more intelligent being. It's exactly as you say. It's our creation. We've designed these systems, but we've also fed it information that we have created over time. And some of that is the best of us. Some of that is the best of human creation, the most kind of soaring musical outputs, those sorts of things. And some of it isn't.
Yes.
Some of it is the worst of humanity. And it's all in this messy pot together. And it's learning from both of those sources.
People are using AI in their daily lives already, right? It's kind of you can't even Google anymore without AI popping up and saying, you read this. And so often, it's something you search for something and it comes up with an answer and you think, is that right? Is that really? How do I check that? We've had parliamentary inquiries where submissions have used AI and been just plain wrong, absolutely not based on fact, just made up. It's kind of taken from bits and pieces, but that doesn't make it a fact. Parliamentarians have gotten in trouble for sourcing documents that didn't exist because AI said, well, we had to kind of, the computer goes, okay, 1 + 1 = 3. Oh, no, it doesn't. Oh, maybe it's 4. Oh, actually, it's 2.
Yeah.
So there's all these mistakes being riddled through the process. But people are embracing this technology. It is designed to, what we're being told is to make life easier, make life more efficient, and help us kind of transition our workforce. How do you feel about that part of it? Like, what are the is is that all just, tech spin? Are the tech bros just, trying to sell us a product that we don't necessarily need?
Life would be simpler if it was all spin, to be honest. I sometimes say that it feels like we're living in a fever dream. There are these dystopian realities that we're being confronted with, and they really are dystopian. That example I was giving before of it's called the Suspect Target Management Plan in the New South Wales Police. That is truly awful and dystopian.
Yes.
And at the same time, there are some wonderful things that are happening as well. Not long after I had that experience with the New South Wales Police, I had this kind of opposite experience of AI. So much of my work in human rights has been with people with a disability, and the something as common as a smartphone. I'm holding mine right now. That can make a huge, almost life-changing difference if you are blind or have a vision impairment. Because now what you can do with the magic of AI, you can hold up your smartphone and it can literally help you see the world around you. Imagine that. Imagine, being reliant on other people to do something as basic as going to the supermarket, that kind of thing. And now you can go to the supermarket and you can hold up your phone and it'll tell you what's around you. Like that literally changes lives for the better.
Yes.
And so, I'm asked, sometimes, are you for AI or are you against AI? And it seems to me like such a weird question. It's like saying, are you in favor of water? Like, yes, I'm in favor of water when I'm thirsty. We need it for, drinking, right? But if I am, in the middle of a deluge and my house is like 2 meters underwater, I'm not in favor of it. Then, like, that's just not how we think, right?
Yeah.
What we need to do when we're thinking now about something that is so pervasive, so powerful as AI, is we should be embracing what makes it good, the things that can actually make our lives more inclusive, our community more inclusive, and our lives better. And we should push really hard against those things that are terrible, that make our lives bad. And I think the one pervasive myth that some of the tech bros are trying to tell us is that we have to accept all the terrible stuff in order to grasp the good. And that is...
that it's a trade-off.
Yeah, that it's a trade-off. And there's nothing more bullshit than that, right?
Yeah.
Like, it is completely untrue. There is nothing... We don't say, for something like motor cars, that, we should just accept that every 10th motor car is going to kind of blow up.
Yes,
we don't do that, right?
Yes, or the brakes won't work.
Exactly. We say, no, you have to make sure that those systems are safe and that people can drive those cars.
There's seatbelts, there's
Yeah,
brakes.
exactly.
Oh, and guess what? There's road rules.
Exactly.
There's speed limits.
Exactly.
You put all of this regulation around it. And I guess this comes back to, like, what is the purpose of this technology? If it's to help humanity, then humanity needs to be centered in the technology itself, in the regulations, in the why.
Yep.
People need to be at the center of all of this.
Yeah. I had this experience a couple of years ago, and this sounds like a story that's sort of too perfect to be true, but it actually happens to be true. So it was my birthday, and it also happened to be Melbourne Cup Day.
Oh.
And my then 6-year-old son, Gabriel, was saying, what is the Melbourne Cup? Like, we're not a big horse racing family.
Yeah.
And so he said, what's the Melbourne Cup? What is horse racing? I said, oh, okay, well, you have like a horse, and then you have the human, the jockey, and they're like a team, and they're riding against other horses and humans. And he goes, oh, yeah, Dad, I get it. And then we were talking a bit further, and it became clear that he thought that the horse was riding the human rather than the other way around. And we all had a big laugh about it. Ha, ha, ha. But then it became clear to me, oh my God, this is such a metaphor for the life that we're living at the moment, where we're being asked as the humans to contort ourselves to the machines, to kind of change the way that we want to live so that the machines can kind of operate more efficiently. That is completely the wrong way around.
Wow. And I'm sorry, but this technology is being built for us to use to help us, whether it's efficiency, whether it's inclusion of the blind person at the supermarket example. So the machines are not in control here.
No.
And if we're handing over control to the machines, I think we've got a problem.
Exactly. And that's the choice we have now. We can continue to hand over that control and that kind of autonomy to machines if we want to, or if we don't make some really big decisions now. So we can still not choose to go down that path, but that's a choice that has like a deadline to it.
Yes.
If we kind of just fail to make decisions, then the most powerful companies in human history will make those decisions for us, and they won't be decisions that we like.
Well, that's what a lot of the concerns that are being raised with me, and I've just established this new parliamentary inquiry into the big data centres, precisely because I'm hearing people are like, well, hang on a minute, where is the community in this? At what point do we get to start regulating? What does this mean? How much energy? There is this kind of concern that if we don't do something now, it's going to be too late.
Yeah.
And of course, data centers themselves seem kind of a strange concept. Like, what are they? They're big buildings with a lot of computers that are computing and exchanging information.
Yeah. They
take a lot of power. They get really hot, don't they? So they need water to cool them down.
Yep.
And they actually take up more land space than people realise. When you save something to the cloud, it's not just stuck up there in the air, is it? It's like
right.
It's saved somewhere in some data centre on the earth.
Yeah.
So it's kind of this, we're having to reconstruct the conversation. It's almost backwards in order to work out how we need to regulate it or how we want to have it controlled.
Yeah, that's right. I hate the metaphor of the cloud because it suggests that our kind of modern data is just kind of hanging above us like rain or something, just ready, to kind of fall down
Fairy
when we
dust
need it.
up
Exactly.
there.
Yeah. It's the exact opposite image for what the reality is.
Yeah.
The reality of how our vast stores of data are collected and then processed is in these enormous, almost unimaginably big data centers, hulking structures of concrete, very few windows, where you just have row upon row of servers that are kind of storing and processing information about you, Sarah, and about me, and about all of us. And you're right; they're so big, they're so energy hungry that the kind of unit of measurement for a data center isn't its physical space, but how much energy it uses.
Right. So when somebody says we've got, there's a proposal to build a 200 megawatt data center, they're talking about energy, the energy it consumes.
Yeah.
They're not talking about how much data's in there.
No, that's right.
Because the data's kind of coming and going anyway and kind of, changing and whatever. But it's all about how much energy they're consuming. And that's a shitload of energy.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, when you think about what Australia has distributed across the entire country at the moment in data center capability, it's about 1.2 to 1.3 gigawatts, which is about sort of 15% of the state of New South Wales's electricity use. So it's not, it's quite significant.
It's significant already.
Yeah, exactly. Spread across the entire country. But there are plans in place to double that within the next year or two. And we're now hearing about plans for individual data centers that might be, 800 megawatts or even a gigawatt big. And then there are some that are even bigger than that. There's one in Louisiana which is about 4 gigawatts in size.
4 gigawatts. I think, I've spent a lot of time talking about energy and renewables versus fossil fuels. I mean, a gigawatt is about as much as you kind of your big coal-fired power station can produce.
Yeah.
So we're talking shitloads of coal-fired power station worth of energy.
Yeah. The single biggest energy user in Australia is the aluminium smelter in Tomago in New South Wales, and that's not quite a gigawatt. And so if we're talking about single, data centres that might be significantly larger than that, then it's a scale of energy use that Australia has never even contemplated in the past. And the timeline is incredibly ambitious from the tech companies as well.
And so there's a difference, isn't there? Because there's, as you say, there's 1.2, 1.3 megawatts of worth of data centre already.
Yeah, gigawatts of data centre. Yeah, right.
Gigawatts of data centre, and that's to kind of process what we already use, right?
Yeah.
Our mobile phones, our office buildings, the cloud storage that we currently have here in Australia. Like it's at that level. But these big, massive data centres that are being proposed around the country, that's not for Australia's use, right?
So it's useful to think about this, particularly the AI part of the data centre story, in two categories.
Mm-hmm.
So if you are kind of typing a query into one of the generative AI applications like ChatGPT or Gemini or Claude, we actually don't have enough data centre capacity right now to reliably process all of those. So a lot of those are already being processed in data centres in other parts of the world, particularly in the United States or other parts of our region. And that's a problem because those data centres are under enormous pressure. And so the question that a lot of companies are asking is, we want to be able to use these kind of AI applications that we're spending lots of money on. And if we can't have those queries processed, we've got a huge problem. So there's already a pathway just to increase that category, which is the kind of consumer use, the company use, that sort of thing. But there's a whole other category of AI data center activity, and that is at the moment concentrated in two countries in the world, the United States and China. And that's how you build these incredibly powerful AI models. And that's on another scale entirely. So to build one of these new models, which they do, every few weeks or every few months, it is just this like unimaginably big task of kind of computer chips operating at full pelt. And that's where we're talking about not just an extra 1 or 2 gigawatts, we're talking about 5, 10, 20 gigawatts of additional data center capacity. And that is to kind of be one of those major players in the world that is involved in building these new AI applications.
Yes, and they're the facilities that we're now hearing from the government are the companies are coming in and saying, hey, Australia, you've got space.
Yeah.
You've got energy. We don't really have that much water. I don't know where they think all the water's going to come from. But anyway, let's do a deal.
Yeah.
Why do you think Australia is the place they want to come?
Yeah, so they're thinking about those two things, energy and water, and they're thinking about two other things. One is the access to those incredibly powerful chips, because the United States restricts access to those chips to only certain countries. And Australia is one of the countries that is allowed to kind of purchase and operate those chips without any significant restrictions. So that's one thing.
That's kind of a trade arrangement, or
a
government to government deal.
Exactly, and it's for military and geopolitical reasons primarily that the United States imposes those restrictions. And then the fourth thing is just risk. We're a long way from the world's kind of worst conflicts. The idea of which had previously been happening, of data centers being established in the UAE, in Saudi Arabia, in other parts of the Middle East, is much more difficult to come at now that there is active hot conflict in those countries.
And look what happens. I mean, Donald Trump, wakes up one day and says he wants to bomb the place.
Yeah.
the rest of the world goes, oh, shit,
Yeah.
what do we do now? So,
Well, and in return, Iran has actually targeted some of those data centers with its missiles too. So it is a much more dangerous part of the world.
volatile.
Yeah. So I think what that kind of big number of potential countries in the world that could be housing these data centers, when you actually apply those 4 criteria, energy, water, access to chips, and a relatively safe and stable country, it becomes a very small group of countries that could actually do that. One of which has long been the United States, but they're now at the limit of what they can do. So there are lots of parts of the United States where the electricity grid has become really unstable because of the massive draw of energy from the existing data centers.
And I mean, that's fascinating, isn't it? That in the US itself, that these centers are having. I don't even like calling them centers. They're like they're factories. They're kind of they're facilities. They're doing things, not just sitting there.
Yeah.
It's actually powering the whole time.
I like that word, factory. I think that's a really good word for it because it is making stuff. There's real activity happening, and there's a lot of kind of turbines whizzing and so on. Yeah,
and you hear people. I mean, so there's the concern that these big data factories are having on the energy grid in the US, but also the community and communities where they've had them housed or where they're being built or expanded are starting to go, well, hang on, what's going on here? And I mean, the noise is just one thing that people are starting to raise. Just thinking about the kind of the whirling and the activity that's going on all the time. And I guess that's why now Australia is looking at this and going, well, hang on, what are the regulations we need, or why would we take this on? What do we get out of this? I keep thinking of it as it is a new extractive industry.
Yeah.
It's just like mining, isn't it? Like we let the mining companies come, dig up our coal and gas or iron ore, like dig it all up, flog it off. We didn't tax them properly. We're not getting, value out of the resource. It's Australian, but it's all being exported overseas. And then we have to import it back in a better product.
Yeah.
What have we got out of this? Like we've made this mistake already.
Yeah. Yeah.
Why would we let another extractive industry come in and take us for a ride?
I think that's right. And I think we need to be more confident as a country about the leverage that we have and also think really carefully about some of the best innovation decisions we've made in history. What we've actually said is we're not just trying to build something for the narrow benefit of a very small number of people. We're trying to build something over the longer term. That's what Australia's really good at. And so when you look at some of the headline figures, it's incredibly appealing. So the kind of rough rule of thumb when you're building a data center is that for every gigawatt of data center that you're building, it's about $30 billion, billion with a B, right?
Wow, that's a lot of money.
Yeah,
that's
right.
a lot of money.
But here's the thing, right? 80% of that cost is actually the chips. These are these incredibly powerful microchips
we don't own.
That we don't own. They get manufactured here. So 80 cents on every dollar immediately leaves Australia, right? It just sort of, out the door straight away. And so, so of that $30 billion, 80% is actually a bit of a mirage. So you're left with 20%, but 20% of $30 billion is
still a lot
of money, right? And so I think what we need to then say is really clearly, well, how are we going to drive something and build something that is genuinely of value to the community as a whole? And how are we actually going to front up in an adult way to those challenges, particularly of energy and water and that sort of sense of community safety around where those data centres are.
Rather than just kind of thinking, oh, well, she'll be right, mate.
Yeah, exactly.
Don't worry about it. Or the tech bros, they'll sort it out. Yeah, they got it all underhand. Yeah. It's fine.
I think
they'll look after us.
Exactly.
I mean, Elon Musk looking after us or, or whoever else. I mean,
It's an unappealing prospect.
It is a very if your solution to your problem is that Elon Musk will look after you, I think you've asked the wrong question and you're barking up the wrong tree.
Yeah, I think that's right. But it's striking to me that we haven't had that kind of public conversation about what does this actually look like, right? Like, yes, we've all seen those headline figures of big investment, and I'm not saying that that's unimportant. But these are not big job creators. After you've built the data center, you don't have huge numbers of employees operating. It's not like the factories that we used to have, in the kind of earlier parts of the 20th century that built cars and those sorts of things. This is a completely different scenario. And so what we need to do is have an open conversation in the Australian community about what does deriving real value look like and what does building in a way that actually kind of, increases our renewable energy industry, that preserves water, that protects communities, we need to put the tech companies to proof to actually show how that can all be achieved. And if it can't, I think we also need to be adult enough to be able to say, well, no,
not
thank
here.
you. Yeah.
Not here. That takes some strength and some spine from politicians, though, because it's so easy, I think, to have an industry come in and promise the world $30 billion investment. Well, you've just explained to us it's not $30 billion. It's going to create all these jobs, maybe for the construction of the facility, the factory, the data factory, but they're not factory workers that are in there, they're computers.
Yeah.
So it's not long-term workforce kind of investment. Energy, who the hell knows exactly how that's going to happen? I mean, there's a data centre that's planned for South Australia at the moment. And correct me if I get the terminology wrong, but 800 megawatts, which is more, that's how it's measured.
Yeah.
800 megawatts. That's more power than the whole of Adelaide.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right.
It's almost impossible to get your head around, isn't it?
And we're in the middle of trying to build out our energy grid so it is sustainable, so it's relying on renewables, so it's reliable for the community. And then, tech companies are just going to come in and plug into our grid.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think what they've been saying so far is that they want to build new energy generation that is not necessarily, that won't be a kind of a net draw from the grid, and they really want to focus on renewables. So what I would say is let's take them at their word because that's a great commitment, but to actually make good on that is difficult. So when you look at some of the new build data centers in the United States, they rely really heavily on gas power. And if you've ever, Australia has the good fortune of not having a lot of gas power generation, but if you've ever been near one of those, it is incredibly noisy. Yeah. That's the thing that's making all the noise. But also that is not renewable. Natural gas is not renewable.
No.
And so it's one thing to say, yeah, we would prefer to build more renewable. Well, I would prefer to be, able to run the 100 meters in 10 seconds.
Yeah.
But that's not going to just be
happen.
self-executing.
No.
Yeah. So you've got to find, I think, a way to actually hold companies to their commitments.
And not we'll build it first and then we'll come.
Yeah.
We'll come with the renewables after or the water solution after.
Yeah.
Because it sounds as though a lot of these companies are promising to get their builds done very quickly, and you said an extra gigawatt of data capacity in the next 12 months or couple of years, and that's pretty fast time frame.
Yeah.
That renewable energy is not going to be online by then. Well, it doesn't seem really realistic, does it?
We haven't been able to achieve that sort of, speed for building massive projects in Australia in the past. So maybe this will be the one where we do. But you've got to have a realistic plan. And that realistic plan has to have some fallbacks if those if you're not able to connect it to new renewable energy sources. And so again, I think we need to be really open with communities about what that would look like.
Yeah, and it feels to me, you're saying we're at a point right now where we have to, we can't just close our eyes and hope somebody else sorts it out.
Yeah.
This is on, the pressure is on, the tech companies want to come here, they're pressuring our governments, they're promising big things. I mean, part of me thinks if it sounds too good to be true, it probably is. History usually shows that, but whatever. We've really got to kick the tires on this before we sign everything over. And that's part of the inquiry, and the Senate inquiry that we're running. But I guess what I'm hearing from you is this is the moment to take stock and to say we can actually make a choice. We don't just have to blindly, sleepwalk into this decision. We actually can make some decisions. What regulations do we need? What are the commitments that need to be in place? What is the community going to get back from this? And right back to your first point about what's the purpose of it? Is it about helping humanity, or is this going to actually is it going to be used to actually divide us more, or to create more problems? And who's accountable for that if that's what happens?
Yeah, I think that's right. And I think what a mature country does is it doesn't just say, I've got to accept this sort of gift horse, or I've got to reject it. They'll say, I'm willing to accept it, but only under these conditions. And that's what, having a kind of a mature debate will actually bring to the fore. I know what, for me, I'm a lawyer, but before I was a lawyer, I was a human too. I know what for me kind of makes sense for me and my family, but I shouldn't have any greater say than anybody else. For me though, the most important things are, I've got young kids. I don't want my kids to grow up in a country that is, sort of materially worse, like, than the country I grew up in. I don't want it to be dirtier, more polluting, with less access to water, all of those things than I experienced.
But you'll have fast internet.
But with fast internet, exactly, yeah. But I also don't want to. I also don't want a community where we're not thinking deeply about the things that we're making, right? Like, you mentioned earlier, in previous mining booms, we'd kind of extract the iron out of the ground, we'd sell it to another country, and then they'd sell us back a car.
Yeah. That's right. So we
what do we do that for?
It's that traditional kind of idea of, well, how do we value add to the resources we've got rather than just flog them off?
Yeah, that's right. And my colleague, Professor Nick Davis, says, that there's a risk that the decisions we make here on data centers would be like the next kind of strip mining boom. But he's also really careful to say there are opportunities with data centers, but those opportunities really rely on us putting in place very strong guardrails to make sure that we're able to address those risks.
Some people are calling for a moratorium or a pause on the opening of these massive centres, and they're called hyper. Hyperscale, which just says everything to me. It's like you can't just call it huge, massive. No, hyper, and then
Yeah, that's right.
Anyway, that we should put a pause on these big ones because we don't have all this stuff sorted out. That doesn't mean we don't look at the advantages, but to your point, we might have to say no to some of them, or to some of it. And we won't know that if we've said yes too quickly. Yeah.
I mean, look, I think, we're living in a world of Donald Trump and, the art of the deal. I think if you're kind of in a negotiation from as strong a position as I think we are in, then you don't go into saying, look, the answer is yes. Please, will you give us some other things?
That's right.
That's a crazy thing to do,
That's
right?
right.
Like it's much more sensible to say, look, all the options are on the table. One of those options is yes. Another option is no. And it's only going to be a yes if we can satisfy the things that are most important. And I think at the moment we're not doing that.
Back to the kind of, out of the data center world and back to kind of AI itself, there is increasing concern of people are worried about how AI could be used, and your example of the list of young people and kids is a real life one. It's not something that could happen. It did happen.
Yeah,
it did happen.
That's right.
Where should people go to try and? There's so much information about AI, data centers, what this means, what it doesn't. I mean, if you ask AI about AI, it comes up with some funny answers.
Yeah.
Prefers not to talk about itself.
Yeah.
But we need trusted information for people, because we are in this crazy world where technology is actually supercharged misinformation and disinformation, and some of that deliberately.
Yeah.
Some of that to serve the purposes of the vested interests.
Yeah.
So I'm just thinking about people who are listening to our conversation today. Like, where should they go to get good, trusted information?
I mean, I think if someone's trying to sell you something, then they're in a reasonably good position to be able to talk about all of the great things about it. And so there's nothing wrong with listening to, a Sam Altman or even an Elon Musk when they're trying to tell you all of the best things about the products and services that they're making. But you wouldn't go to those people as your only source of information. And there's actually been some fantastic filmmaking, but also some really good books that sort of give you a much more kind of independent view of how AI operates. One of the books that was most influential on me was by an Australian, an amazing woman, Kate Crawford, who's been based in the United States for a long time now. Her book is called Atlas of AI. And one of the things that it does, I think particularly well, is that it makes the point that you're making, Sarah, which is that AI isn't some kind of, bit of fairy dust that kind of hangs above us like the kind of mythical cloud. It is very, very much grounded in reality. So she starts by talking about how, the mining of rare metals, the kind of extraction of coal to create, dirty electricity, all of those sorts of things, that they're really, really central to how AI is built. And then she talks a bit about how it operates. And she's not, anti-AI at all. She's someone who has basically given her professional career to really understanding how the system works. And I think unless you understand how the system works, you're really going to struggle to understand how we can make good decisions as a community about what we should embrace and what we should push back on. It's a bit of a kind of a cheeky thing to do. But a couple of years ago, I wrote a book myself with a wonderful colleague called Daniel Naylor. And what we tried to do was look at artificial intelligence from the perspective of people who care about human rights. So what are the things that really should matter to us if what we want to do is kind of protect people's dignity. And so that I think is another way in. I know that, human rights is kind of the lens through which I tend to look at problems. It's not the only lens, but I think it's a useful one because I think what it reminds us to do.
It's a vital one.
Yeah.
If human rights aren't, the basis of how we engage with this technology, then why the fuck are we doing it?
Yeah.
It's not just to make Elon Musk richer.
He doesn't need us to do that.
He doesn't need us to do that.
Yeah.
I mean, they're putting aside that I cannot believe where there's all this talk about, the world's first trillionaire. I don't think we should be celebrating that. And that's a fucking indictment on society as far as I'm concerned. Like, really. Anyway, but what are those things, Ed, that we should be saying need to be on the table? What are we looking for? What are those markers? What should governments not sell us short on?
So there are three key things that I think governments need to be laser focused on. The first is thinking about like kind of the physical manifestation of AI, which is mostly what we've been talking about today. So making good decisions about data centers, the energy and water use, all of that sort of stuff. So we've covered that. The second is we know that there are some ways in which AI can be used that actually cause harm. And most of our laws are kind of technology neutral, which means they apply to all technologies and none. But the problem is sometimes we don't enforce them equally. So I'll give you an example against myself. You know, when I was Human Rights Commissioner, if we'd, got wind that there was a crusty old bank manager who thinks that women make bad customers and doesn't give any loans to women, we would have been all over that bank manager by the end of the day, right? Like we would have absolutely been laser focused on addressing that. But we know that's actually not the main problem today. We know that banks use AI to make home loan decisions, but actually they have that problem because those AI systems have been trained on historical data sets. And decades ago, women found it much, much harder to get a home loan. So those systems wrongly are kind of still making it hard for women to get a loan. And then we kind of, instead of saying, well, that's clearly unlawful, that's clearly discriminatory, we've got to take that person to court. Too often we kind of scratch our chins and we kind of go, what an interesting ethical problem. It's not. I think regulators and the regulatory ecosystem that supports regulators have to be crystal clear. Those things, when they're unfair, when they're a breach of someone's legally protected human rights, we need to absolutely enforce the law. Okay, so that's the second thing. And then the third thing is there are some gaps in our law. Privacy law is a really good example, right? Our privacy law was drafted mostly before the rise of the internet, let alone AI. So most countries in the world have actually modernized their privacy law to make sure that people are protected. We haven't. We've been really slow to do that, even with commitments from more than one Attorney General, more than one Australian government. It's
just one of those issues. I mean, I've been in Parliament a long time now, and it's just one of those issues that constantly gets kicked down the road.
Yeah.
Oh, maybe this time. Oh, no, it's too hard. No, maybe, no.
But you know what? That's having real world consequences now. So just over a year ago, there was this really interesting investigation about how Facebook was training its generative AI models on their Facebook users' data. But actually...
Unbeknown to Facebook users, a lot of them.
Yeah, but most people had no idea, right? But the interesting thing was that they weren't doing it on all Facebook users. So for Facebook users in Europe, for example, where they had modernized their law, they said, no, we're not going to train it on them. Even in countries, that are a long way from Europe, like Brazil, they were not using Facebook users' personal information to train their system. But a country where they were using Facebook users here in Australia, and that's because we just hadn't modernized our laws to actually kind of basically set a boundary and say, no, like people shouldn't be able to, or companies shouldn't be able to just come in and steal people's personal information and use it for their own purposes. And
that data usage of individual users' data, it's so... it's so obscene in so many ways because people are not told.
No.
It's not transparent. It's often done to make money for the company, for the social media company or the tech platform or the AI platform, and it's my data. I'm not getting paid any of this.
No, and even
let alone being asked. There's no consent and there's no payment.
Yeah, that's right. And even if you have sometimes this sham consent, right, where at some point in some 5,000 word document, we may use it for no one reads that.
No.
We're not living in the real world if we think that that is true consent, because it's not. And so, you know, we had a similar problem, you know, a generation ago with our consumer protection laws. So what used to be the case was that if you were buying a car, you'd be given this huge contract that no one would read, and it would say some terrible things like, you know, if the car blows up as if you're driving it off the lot, well, then that's your problem, not ours. And what Australia and lots of other countries did was they said, no, like there are certain basic minimum requirements that no contract allows you to get out of.
Yes.
And so that's how we got the Australian consumer law, which protects us from that. It's a really important protection. The same should be true for privacy as well. That, you know, you have these sort of sham consent arrangements where people just they have to click through, otherwise they can't access the service. That should not be treated as consent. That should be treated as just like something else. And we should, you know, require companies to comply with some bare minimum standards. And you know what? The government has committed to do that. They committed to do that years ago now, but they still haven't introduced the legislation.
Well, I think that's all really important. And then, of course, then in addition to that, the rules and the holding companies accountable in terms of those promises on the energy usage, the water. Water, it seems to me, a real big problem here. I mean, I say this as a South Australian. I mean, we're the driest state in the driest continent on Earth. I don't know where these massive data centre thinks they're going to get the water from without it actually impacting on the environment or on the communities. And I'm interested to hear what farmers think about this. If data centres are going to be sucking a whole lot of water out of the River Murray, for example, you know, you've got a whole debate about who's actually using what this precious resource is. Is it for powering AI, big multinational companies, and their profits, or is it for watering the food we all need to eat?
Yeah. I mean, we can't all drink $100 notes.
No.
You know, that's the sad thing, right? We need, even if some of the kind of, you know, the prognostications about how much money will flow are true, we need the water to flow more importantly.
Yeah. Well, Ed, this has been a fabulous conversation. I think we could have kept talking about it for, you know, hours and hours more because it's big. It's so huge. And, you know, you're at the epicenter of this. You know, the way technology is being used, misused, the impact on humans, humanity, our rights in all of this. And it's so big. It's moving so fast. Like, what gives you hope about trying to get this right?
So I'm a human rights lawyer, which means by definition, I'm an optimist. And I do think there are some things to be optimistic about. The thing that really gives me hope is there are some kind of companies here in Australia who've kind of played to our strengths. So Australia's been at the heart of geospatial mapping using AI, where you get like this extraordinary picture of, for example, the aftermath of a bushfire. And you can kind of get help to those animals that are literally dying in ways that we couldn't do that before. These are really good uses of AI that make our communities and our environment better. You know, we've got innovators here in Australia that are right at the bleeding edge globally of that sort of innovation. And what appeals to me about it is that it takes a genuine problem, one that we can all agree on is something that we should address. It uses technology in a very targeted way to start to come at that problem. And then it allows us to do all of the kind of rest of human ingenuity and getting the kind of support to communities and to animals that need it. And so I think it's those sorts of projects that are really thoughtful, that are really considered. Those are the sorts of things that give me hope.
Well, from one optimist to another, here's hoping. Thank you so much, Ed, for coming in today. It's been fabulous.
It's been an absolute pleasure.